Quite excited to be with you today for the live session. So, streaming today live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and on Twitter, our monthly Wednesday chat, first Wednesday of the month. And now I have a very special guest with me today. We're going to have a great chat, Raef. Um, we're friends, I think, Raef, outside of, like we've
Absolutely.
worked together. Yes. Work together. We have great conversations and yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to today. Let me read a bit about your background, Drive, before we start, so that everyone knows your background a bit more. So, Raif is an accomplished executive and thought leader, formerly leading the global research efforts at IMA, currently the executive director of Profitability Analytics Center of Excellence, BASE. He is an award winning author, global speaker, and media contributor in the areas of performance management, controlling, sustainability, business ethics, analytics, and so much more. So I love that I have you today, Raif. It's been quite it's been I think we've planned for it for a while now. But yeah, welcome today to have you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been friends and colleagues for quite some time now, and I always love our chats. It's so interesting, and I'm sure today will be no different. Analytics and data and technology are just in our areas that we're both so passionate about, and so in the future of finance in those areas. So I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, me too. So looking forward to it. And yeah, like today, as it was always, it's just a chat. We have our coffee with us, and we're just gonna um, go through some of the topics that are covered in your paper that was published, "How to Embrace Analytics." So I have the paper with me. I've read it, and I was showing Raif before we started how I have everything kind of really highlighted and took notes and things because it's such a good paper, Raif. Really, it's awesome. Well done.
Well, thank you. We're proud of the paper.
It is brilliant. So let's deep dive a bit about like there are a couple of things that I really want to like us to have a chat about. And one of the first things is really setting this tone at the top that you mentioned in the paper, because analytics and data strategy and with all what's happening in technology, as much as you can push it from bottom up and share this knowledge with with the leadership, but really the lead for analytics and setting this tone from to the top is really important. So let's just chat about that a bit. What's your thoughts on it, and what made you consider this as one of the main areas when you're driving data analytics and embracing it in organizations?
Yeah, that's a great place to start because there was a Bain study that said there were four key drivers for success in implementing a data-driven organization. One was having data-savvy people, another was having quality data, a third was having state-of-the-art tools, and the fourth was having an organizational intent, right? And that means just processes and incentives that support analytical decision making. And so in this paper, we identify 6 factors that help support organizational intent. And the most important one, I think, so this is why I think it's a great place to start our conversation today, is having the right tone at the top. And so, when we talk about uh, having a data-driven organization, we're talking about organizations changing the way they do business, right? And
Mm,
it's if in that case you need to have it's a good change management process, right? Whenever you
mm,
introduce any sort of new methodology or process, you need to have the rest of the organization buy into into that change. And change management 101 says that you need to have buy-in at the top. You need to have the right tone at the top, because if you don't, the chances of success are slim. Not only for the initial success, but for ongoing success as well. So sometimes, and we've looked in this paper, but also with regard to other initiatives as well. Sometimes a mid-level manager might say, "Hey, let's become a data-driven organization and implement in our segment of the organization." But that what happens when that manager moves on and there's no buy-in at the top of the organization, then the effort just kind of wilts away. So it's really really important that at the very top of the organization there's buy-in, and that's related, and a commitment to resort to sustaining this effort, and it's also related to uh, the other key factors in having successful implementation of to be a data driven organization. Like, one of the other factors is having rewards for analytical employee and analytical decision making. Well, who determines the incentive system, right? It's the upper management. And another factor is having adequate resources to to hire the right people or train your people to uh, have the infrastructure to get the data you need, and to have obtain the tools, leading edge tools to analyze that data. And again, the commitment to provide those resources come from the top of the organization. So uh, for all of those reasons, uh, having this buy-in at the top, having the right tone at the top for top, the CEO and the board, say, hey, this is how we're going to change. This is what's important to us, and this is what you will do. is so
Yes.
key. Mm.
I love how you were explaining how actually the analytics and driving that is kind of a change management. It is change management, and I always emphasize analytics is a change management exercise. And as you said, you don't want someone in the middle management to go do something and then leave, and then you lose your analytics. But equally, it's much more. It's the incentives. It's the processes.
Yep.
So love it how you explain like, is it change management? And I've seen it in organization as like different organizations as a practitioner as well. How people come and go, and then you can see things like a department shining. They're doing so much analytics, and they're starting their data assets, or they have their analytics strategy, and seeing when they're going to implement an AI and things like that 3-year plan. That person goes, and all of a sudden that department kind of dies a bit. So totally agree. That is a brilliant way to say it. Analytics is a change management.
And,
um,
there was in rereading this paper, preparing for today, and there was something that came to mind that I thought you, hopefully the rest of the audience, might especially appreciate, given your finance background. And it's the use uh, of data, right, and data analytics, uh, is we looked at that in our study, and we saw that in some organizations are managing based on analytics. Many aren't. It's again very much a work in process for a lot of organizations. And then there were some organizations that were using analytics after the fact to justify decisions that have been already made, right? So that's not obviously a data-driven organization. And where I'm going with this is that we, as finance professionals, we have kind of the same gripe that often, the information provided operational folks, uh, on occasion is used, is often ignored, and on occasion is used after the fact to justify decisions that have been made already. So, again, it's a question of getting buy-in, and providing information that's useful, to the users, of the information.
I think, yeah, that is really important. And just to mention a couple of things on that, I think everyone can actually send us texts and chats on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Twitter. And I'll see the questions that you're having, and Raif and I were going to pick them up and answer them, or maybe that will be a discussion between us. So feel free, please, to put your comments and questions in the chats, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on Twitter. We're live now. But on that, Raif, it's quite interesting because when you're saying setting the tone at the top and you're saying this kind of finance data, and it's not only in finance, to be honest, working in analytics, it's finance, it's purchasing, you get stuff from engineering and so on. So, and this is the bit, if you don't have the buy in from the top, a project, an artificial intelligence project, or just even a visualization project, as simple as a visualization project, you need data from different departments to do your analysis, to do your planning, and it is not now finance data or purchasing data or engineering data. All of a sudden, you need all this data to actually build the model. Without it, it won't work. So, and I agree, because if one of the function is not playing, that's the bit. It's like, if you imagine it's again, if one of the function is not playing, you're losing the data. So it does have to come from the top.
It is, and not to put a plug in for PACE, the Profitability Analytics Center of Excellence,
Feel
but
free to do that.
but but we've developed this Profitability Analytics framework, and it's strategy management framework, where it's strategy formulation, validation, and implementation. And one of the things that we emphasize in the strategy validation phase of this process is that you should model first in terms of operational terms, and only then should you attach monetary values to them. Then you do the financial modeling. And so, absolutely, as finance professionals, we need to be more conversant with operational data. It's the language of operational folks, and one of the critiques of accounting information that in the past is that we're providing to uh, unusable information to operating people who don't speak this language. And it's the same is true more broadly for data scientists and data analysts. You need to provide the data in a way that is useful to the intended user. So, again, in our PACE model, it's very much all about data, right? That's why I call it profitably analytics, because it's obtaining the right data, modeling it based on what we call causality, looking at cause and effect relationships, and looking at the operational economic reality first, and then just after that, talking about the finance aspect of it.
I think that if you could share with me that model and everything, I'll make sure to put it in the comments so everyone reads it. Because I think what you're sharing is really important, and this is the bit where it's based. To be honest, it's not only looking at the model itself; it's also the and that gives it like moves us to the next bit, which is the effective use of technology. But your model is brilliant, like the PACE model and explaining the profitability and everything. But really, this also kind of paves the way to like, where is the data for this model? Because you need to build a data asset. That data sits somewhere on the cloud or depending on the organization. But like, your model is brilliant. The PACE model is really important. But then it's also like the things that finance people and purchasing people and engineering, it's like how organization can look at strategies for effective use of technology. And I'll just mention here the one of the things that you've written brilliantly in the article, Raif, about how 33% of the organizations believe that they have developed strategies for effective uses of leading edge analytics technique and technologies. So, despite that, we've been speaking about analytics for years now, only 33% of organizations have a strategy. And I'm just like, how can you manage something where you don't even have a strategy?
I know that was uh, I don't know. I'm generally a glass half full person, but that was pretty depressing. And especially, if there was any message that came loud and clear throughout all of these studies that we did, was that almost every organization sees the use of analytics as key to their future success and to being more competitive, and to, being more successful than their competitors. So if the overwhelming majority of companies think this is like the critical success factor for their for their future, and only a third of them have thought about what strategies they need to have to deploy this. It's the change is needed. But having said that, this paper, I think, is about 3 years old. It was written just before the COVID pandemic, and I think that the pandemic was a wake up call for a lot of organizations. A lot of them were struggled for survival, and many didn't. And those that do survive were hopefully coming out of the worst of the pandemic, and organizations, I think, are uh, more open-minded to rethinking their strategy, rethinking their business model, and really thinking hard about the way forward. And with especially with the work from home movement, that brought teleconferencing from its infancy to almost the primary way of doing business for white collar jobs, at least, right? And it really spurred the development of a lot of technologies on. So uh, hopefully, hopefully, uh, organizations will embrace this change that they're undergoing, and develop that strategy. And I have another paper that I wrote that kind of laid out a plan of how organizations should develop that strategy and how they should approach implementing these new technologies. And it starts with considering your organization's business goals. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And then once you do that, then you need to identify the capabilities that you need, to support achievement of your goals. And then you'll need to identify your process improvements. How you're going to develop the capabilities, and then finally you identify how you're going to do it. What technology do you need? So if you go through those 4 steps, you can develop a strategy, an implementation plan for adopting new technologies and embracing data analytics.
It's interesting. I think yes, I can agree definitely. With the COVID, things have changed a bit, but now that I'm seeing, going more to conference, and I'm sure you're the same. Speaking with people, I think the data strategy itself, and it's something that I'm so passionate about, building a data strategy, and having this kind of 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year really strategy for the organizations. Um, I think it depends also on the maturity of the organizations, because some companies were very reactive to COVID. It was more of a reactive things to just make sure, like, oh, how can we? People are home, they're not going to the office. What do we do? And then things started to develop. But rather than just having, okay, let's create our own data strategy. And I love how you explained what you've written in your other paper about a data strategy, and the 4 key blocks, or the 4 key things that organizations should look into. Um, And I'm trying to link because it's quite close, and I'll share with you this maybe afterwards. It's quite close to the model that I developed for one of the papers about actually how to create a data strategy as well, and looking at pre-scaling analytics and the things that are needed before you start analytics in a function, and then when you scale it and you start actually doing analytics, and then at the end wrap it up with actually the business as usual, so post scaling. But I think this kind of maturity level that we're speaking about, I know 33% might be low, but to be honest, has it increased to more than 50, with organization looking at, the latest technologies there? And we're speaking now not only artificial intelligence, we're speaking like blockchain has developed a lot. It's matured in the last few years. Metaverse is there, digital twin. So we're having so many technology that is out there. And I'm not sure if all organizations, well, they don't have to take it all into account because it also depends on the size, but it's having this kind of data strategy and also the use of the technology itself, which is quite interesting that you mentioned it in the paper.
Yeah, and it's your comment brought to mind one of the statistics in this paper, and
Please.
where or companies were asked where they were on their data driven strategy implementation and process, and I think only about 16% said they're complete, and most of them said, "Well, we're working on it. Come back to us."
So have you done this yet? No, I'll just start. It's good that you've
It's-
reminded me. I'll do that and come back.
exactly, it's on the agenda there somewhere. So, but to be fair, it's kind of a moving target too. The technology is evolving, and the goals are changing, perhaps. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're still in the 50%, as you mentioned. And when we talk about implementation of technologies and such, and we sometimes, as we talked about before, having like a big company bias, and I think especially the SMEs, right, small and medium-sized enterprises, they're always playing catch up, right? Especially the mid-sized companies, which is interesting. Not only in terms of analytics and technology, but almost in so many ways, they're kind of caught in the middle because they're more complex organizations, but they don't have the resources like a big company, so they're always struggling to succeed. Whereas the smaller ones can be more agile and nimble, and the larger ones get to have the resources. So it's I think it's going to be a big challenge as well for the medium-sized companies to complete the data analytics journey.
That is so true, and I think it just shows like this is the third thing I wanted to speak about. It's really data, and when it is a key, but also the resources available. Because with the talent war we're having at the moment, it is crazy. Because even big organization, it's not even if they can afford getting people.
Yeah.
Well, they're not there. Like the people is like the demand is far more than the supply. Let alone medium and small size organization who need the skill set, but the skill set it's very difficult to hire them. They're very expensive, people who work in the area of data and analytics, and it's just very challenging.
Yeah, we did one of these papers we did. We looked at the challenges, and number one is, guess what? Hiring the right people. And so one of the strategies the companies are adopting is trying to develop it in-house. Of course, that takes resources as well. But the job market for data scientists, data analysts was tight, and now it's so much more so. So it definitely is. Companies have to be creative in developing the resources that they need.
This is so true. And I think this is building the capable. I love how you mentioned, Raif, building capabilities in-house,
Yeah.
because those are the thing. A lot of the organization, they don't think like that. They just like, oh, but we're gonna hire someone who knows it. And I'm like, well, yes, you can, but equally you have people who are interested to code, interested to learn interested to learn data engineering. Those people are putting time and effort. Just give them this capability, build the capabilities in. And it is a, to be honest, I was involved in a few of those projects in different organizations, and it can be done setting up the right, working closely with, partnering closely with your suppliers, looking at courses, developing them, and building. Again, this brings us back to the top, you know, this kind of right
Absolutely.
tone at the top, and having
Exactly.
the and having this kind of really set up, like saying, let's build the capabilities.
Yeah.
So it's
And
all kind of linking back.
it does. It does. And that, I think in the paper somewhere it says that tone at the top is related to all these other things, adequate resources and so on. But also with regard to uh, potentially developing in-house capabilities, with regard to finance specifically, but I think any field, it's the need for technological skills and statistical analytical skills and such uh, is is uh, uh, is a wide range. So I mean, you get the folks with nearly no skills, and then you have the data scientists on the other side of the spectrum. And you can where a finance professional wants to be on that spectrum. It can vary. So maybe you can have someone that does RPA, and that's doesn't take that much to learn. I mean, relatively speaking, and it can have generate such great payoffs, and then you can have others that you know get into more into coding and so on. That's a much more perhaps time consuming skill to learn. So it's but you can by investing moderate amount of resources in existing personnel, you can really develop people that can uh, that can contribute significantly to your data analytics efforts.
This is true, and it is, as you said, it is right. It's across all functions. It's not finance, and those are the people. Also, you want to get people who are interested in the topic. Like I've been involved heavily with enable capability building and enabling the skill set within organizations, and you
Mhm.
find people who love visualizations and they can create things and they just pick it like that, and you're like, how did you even know that? And others who are like, no, 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 that's not interesting, and I just want to learn coding, and then they're less like, they pioneer in it, they're really good. And I think this is part of building this capability and understanding, having volunteers in the organizations or people who actually, and to be honest, thinking about it as well, it's and this is something I was speaking about the other day. It's you're building your skill set within the organization, so you're keep retaining your employees, because if you train them, treat them well, they have a career path, they would want to stay. But if you stop training them, that's the bit when they're just gonna learn something and then move quickly or whatever.
And
So
I was thinking you're going back to tone at the top, because looking at that
yes.
from the other side, the other perspective is, if we are serious about this, as the leaders of an organization, then what do we need to do? We need to make sure that our employees as a whole have the necessary skills, not necessarily every individual, but as a group have the data visualization skills, data uh, analytical skills and the cleansing, the wrangling skills and so on. So uh, again, it's all part of an organization, have organizational intent, right? An organization deciding
Yes.
that this is the path it wants to go down.
And I love how you mentioned in the paper the intangible bit of the intent, and having this kind of really, I know it's linked to tangibles at the end of the day because you just act on it, but having this like intangible things like we have this intent, we are going to do it. And some organization goes as far as actually having a proper structured analytics department, a data analytics team with a chief data officer sitting on the executive with the executives at the executive suite, and that those are discussed at a very high level, and those are the organizations that are really serious about it because they are setting it at the top, and it doesn't belong to any of the functions to kind of, it's still different. It's just like, well, when it's standalone, it's just neutral compared to having finance sitting with purchasing, imagine, or purchasing sitting with engineering. You're like, why are you putting those functions together? So data and
Right.
analytics now, or digital, whatever they call it, depending on the organization, whether it's the chief data officer, a chief data or analytics officer, a chief digital officer, having just this kind of um, organization structure it is quite interesting. So yeah, it all goes back to the top.
And it's I'm not sure if it says in the paper. It's a data analytics journey, and it's you can't say, oh, this is what we're going to do, and then move on to the next technique du jour. It's really a commitment, and many organizations start with analytics, perhaps housed in finance or IT, or perhaps both. And in our study, that was the case. But as they mature, the many seem to go to what you just said, having basically an analytics center of excellence with a chief analytics officer, and it seems to be uh, a preferred model for organizations that have a mature analytics uh, capability.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the learning as well. As you said, we're still people organization depending on their size and everything. They're still learning and creating this kind of sorry data strategy. This is part of the data strategy. Like we speak about it was in the University of Cambridge, because I do some research there, and those are the discussions that we're having. It's just like, is it centralized? Is it decentralized, and all that. So a data strategy, again, the tone at the top, and having the strategy of a clear mindset of how are we going to set our data and analytics strategy properly for the next few years, and also be be kind of it's future proof regardless of the technology that will appear afterwards.
Yeah. And it's interesting. That's kind of discussion that we've had in finance for, I don't know, last 20 years. And should finance be centralized? And for a long time it was. And then, the idea of the uh, placing the business partners in the operational units to support them, right? And now we have uh, shared service centers, and we have all sorts of models for finance. And it may depend on the individual organization, its business, its and its maturity. And so in the same thing is true, I'm sure, for analytics as well.
I was reading the other day a paper, and I think I've done a video on it, in for BCG, where it says yes, exactly, decentralized and decentralized, it is a maturity reflection.
Yeah.
So it's where the organization is at this stage.
But I'm not sure how we're doing time wise, but I think a good closing thought would be, it is it's like exercise.
Yes.
It's a journey, not a destination. So and
it,
so your implementation of analytics really needs to be considered in that vein, that you need to successfully compete, be able to work on, make this an important thing for your organization. Make sure you have this buy-in at the top of the organization, and devote the resources to enable your organization to increase its maturity in data analytics and implementation of new technologies.
I agree, and that's the best way to kind of conclude because I know it's like we're slightly over half an hour, which is the thing that we were discussing before, and
Yeah.
that's the challenge when we both start chatting. It ends up
It
as
was a
that.
great chat. I was not disappointed, and hopefully you and the other audience wasn't either.
I really loved it. I really enjoyed it, Raif, as always. And I think there's so much food for thought here. Looking at not only in finance, to be honest, we've covered different functions. We've
Yeah.
covered analytics as a standalone, so it is quite a rich chat. And I think with that we can, yeah, conclude. I think the things that we wanted to discuss for today,
Yeah.
though we went a bit, different. We were not planning for that, but that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I think for everyone, again, if you're watching this recorded, please feel free to put in the chats your questions. Raif and I will be more than happy to answer. And I can tag him if there are questions to you, Raif. I'll tag you in it. Um,
And I'll send you
and
the link to PACE's Profitability Analytics
yes,
Framework.
yes, please. I'll add the pace link into the chats in on all the three platforms. Um, and with that, I hope that was really useful for everyone. Please feel free to reach out to Raif or myself. Follow us on, I know that you're on social media as well, and you always post things that are brilliant. So feel free to please reach out to Raif and follow him on social media. The same for me. And yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Have a great week.
Thanks,
See you.
Fatima. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
being
Thank you
here.
very much, Raif, really. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate today. Really enjoyed it. Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thanks.